The backdrop of this explosive moment was layered with decades of public fascination, intense scrutiny, and a seemingly endless appetite for every detail of Meghan Markle's life. From her early days as a television actress to her meteoric rise into one of the most scrutinized royal figures in history, Meghan has always walked a tightrope, balancing the demands of public life with her personal ambitions, relationships, and sense of self. Yet, despite her careful curation of image and message, the allegation that she paid for an interview threatened to unravel that carefully constructed narrative in a single, dramatic swoop. It all began with the build-up to the interview itself. Sources close to the situation reported that Meghan had approached Jaime Kern Lima, the entrepreneur and media personality known for her authenticity and unapologetic commentary, with an intention that was both professional and strategic. The Duchess reportedly wanted a platform to share her perspectives, possibly to counteract narratives that had been circulating in the press and on social media. The anticipation surrounding the interview was palpable, with both mainstream media and digital influencers speculating about what might be revealed. Yet, behind the polished announcements and social media teases, tension was quietly mounting, unseen by the public but keenly felt by those involved. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. Jaime Kern Lima was no stranger to high-stakes situations. Her career, built on credibility, bold opinions, and entrepreneurial success, positioned her as someone who commanded attention while maintaining integrity. When Meghan reached out, it was a collision of two worlds, one steeped in royal tradition, media manipulation, and global scrutiny. The other rooted in the world of modern entrepreneurship, media savvy, and the pursuit of transparency. The alignment was at once fascinating and precarious, creating a volatile mix that would eventually culminate in the public revelation that everyone had been waiting for, though few predicted just how dramatic the fallout would be. The interview itself was, by most accounts, executed with the expected levels of professionalism. Cameras, lighting, and sound were meticulously arranged, social media teasers hinted at groundbreaking statements, and anticipation reached fever pitch. Yet, beneath the surface, subtle tensions began to emerge. Observers who were present during the taping noted fleeting glances, awkward pauses, and shifts in tone that suggested the conversation was straying into uncomfortable territory. The dialogue, carefully constructed on both sides, occasionally skirted around sensitive issues, yet the underlying unease was palpable. A silent foreshadowing of the seismic revelation that was about to shake the public narrative. Then came the moment that would define the public perception of the encounter. In a statement that seemed to slice through the carefully maintained veneer of media diplomacy, Jaime Kern Lima revealed that Meghan had financially influenced the interview. The words were not delivered in a whisper or oblique hint. They were direct, undeniable, and strategically timed. The implication was explosive, that a person of Meghan's status, whose image is meticulously curated, had allegedly sought to shape the narrative not through candid dialogue, but through financial means. For Meghan, whose life had been subject to relentless public scrutiny, this accusation was not merely damaging. It was a profound challenge to credibility, authenticity, and the carefully nurtured image of integrity that she had projected for years. The immediate reaction was as dramatic as the revelation itself. Social media platforms lit up with speculation, outrage, and disbelief. News outlets scrambled to verify details, and influencers weighed in with commentary that ranged from sympathetic to scathing. Memes, hashtags, and viral clips proliferated within minutes, demonstrating the velocity at which information and misinformation can spread in today's media landscape. The accusation struck at the core of her carefully managed public persona, raising uncomfortable questions about authenticity, influence, and transparency. For someone who had navigated royal life with its inherent pressures and expectations, the added scrutiny of financial impropriety in an interview context represented not just a personal affront, but a potential public relations crisis of monumental proportions. Moreover, the timing of the revelation was particularly impactful. The world had been watching Meghan and Harry's post-royal endeavors closely, analyzing every public statement, business venture, and media appearance. Any misstep, perceived or real, had the potential to trigger amplified reactions, as audiences and critics alike were poised to interpret actions through a lens of skepticism and curiosity. Jaime's revelation thus entered a charged atmosphere, where every nuance would be dissected, every motive questioned, and every consequence magnified in the court of public opinion. Amid this maelstrom, the reactions of the media and public figures provided a complex tableau of influence, perception, and interpretation. Commentators and pundits offered their analyses, often framing the story in the broader context of celebrity accountability, media ethics, and the intersection of personal ambition with public responsibility. Experts in media law and public relations weighed in, highlighting the potential ramifications for both parties and examining the ethical considerations surrounding paid interviews. The story, while centered on Meghan and Jaime, became a flashpoint for larger conversations about power, privilege, and the intricate dynamics of public storytelling in the digital age. The human element was equally compelling. Beyond the headlines, hashtags, and viral clips, there was a narrative of emotional vulnerability, pressure, and the struggle to navigate personal integrity in a hyper-visible world. Meghan's alleged tears, captured through eyewitness accounts and reported by those close to the situation, humanized the drama, reminding audiences that behind every public controversy are real people experiencing fear, shame, and the weight of expectation. Jaime, too, faced scrutiny, balancing the desire to share truth as she perceived it with the awareness of the potential personal and professional fallout from her statements. As the story unfolded, questions multiplied. How would Meghan respond? Could her team mitigate the damage to her reputation? Would public sentiment shift once context, motives, and potential clarifications were examined? And perhaps most importantly, what did this reveal about the fragile intersection of celebrity, influence, and trust in contemporary media culture? The intrigue was irresistible, the stakes were immense, and the narrative tension was sustained by the very human drama at the center of the controversy. The story begins long before cameras rolled and microphones captured every word, long before Jaime Kern Lima made the statement that would send shockwaves across social media. To understand the intensity of this moment, one must first look at the intricate web of planning, strategy, and anticipation that surrounded the interview itself. Meghan Markle, by this point, was a figure who had navigated some of the harshest public scrutiny imaginable. Every word she had ever spoken, every appearance she made, and every public statement had been dissected and analyzed to an extreme degree. In such a climate, arranging an interview was never a simple task. It was a calculated move with enormous stakes. Sources close to Meghan revealed that the idea for the interview had been in development for months. Unlike typical celebrity interviews, which might be scheduled on a whim or coordinated around promotional campaigns, this one was designed with precision. Every element, from the choice of interviewer to the location, lighting, and narrative framing, was meticulously considered. Meghan reportedly sought a platform where she could address certain narratives directly, to reclaim a degree of control over the public perception of her life, choices, and ongoing projects. The goal was not merely to share information, but to craft a compelling, persuasive, and authentic message that could resonate with both critics and supporters. Jaime Kern Lima, on the other hand, brought her own dynamic to the situation. Known for her entrepreneurial success and her unfiltered media presence, Jaime had cultivated a reputation for integrity, authenticity, and directness. Unlike other interviewers who might acquiesce to the subtle pressures of high-profile figures, she had a history of challenging interviewees, asking the difficult questions, and refusing to shy away from controversy. This made her both a potentially ideal partner for Meghan's aims and a source of risk. A misstep, a poorly framed question, or a misunderstood comment could have immediate, far-reaching consequences. As the interview approached, insiders noted a heightened sense of tension. Meghan's team, skilled in media strategy, coordinated every detail meticulously, but even the most carefully laid plans cannot fully anticipate human reactions, particularly in high-pressure, high-visibility situations. There were reports of late-night strategy sessions, rehearsals, and consultations with legal advisors and PR specialists. Every possible scenario was analyzed. How would Jaime react to sensitive topics? How might the public interpret a particular phrase or anecdote? Could a single misstatement become a viral controversy overnight? These discussions were not idle speculation. They reflected the very real pressures of navigating life in the global spotlight. The choice of platform added another layer of complexity. Jaime Kern Lima's reputation as an interviewer who did not shy away from directness was both an asset and a liability. On the one hand, her credibility promised a serious, respectful, and substantive conversation. On the other hand, her unflinching style meant that any misalignment of expectations could result in public fallout. Meghan, acutely aware of her previous media battles and ongoing public scrutiny, reportedly approached the situation with a combination of confidence, caution, and careful planning. Every step had to be deliberate, every word premeditated, and every gesture calculated. On the day of the interview, tensions reached a palpable peak. The set was carefully arranged to reflect a sense of authenticity without appearing staged. Cameras were positioned strategically, lighting emphasized warmth and natural expression, and the atmosphere was crafted to encourage openness while maintaining a professional tone. Staff members noted subtle signs of nervous energy, fleeting expressions, brief moments of hesitation, and small gestures that revealed the intensity of the emotional and psychological stakes. For Meghan, the interview was more than just a media appearance. It was a high-stakes endeavor in which perception, credibility, and reputation hung in the balance. The conversation itself, as reported by those present, began with an atmosphere of cordiality and cautious optimism. Initial questions focused on publicly known topics, allowing Meghan to establish her narrative, articulate her perspectives, and set a tone of openness. Yet as the dialogue progressed, it became clear that the exchange would not remain confined to safe, predictable ground. Subtle shifts in tone, unexpected questions, and nuanced probing created a dynamic in which both parties had to navigate carefully. Each question posed by Jaime was carefully considered, and each response from Meghan was measured, reflecting a delicate balance between transparency and strategic communication. Observers noted that while Meghan appeared composed initially, there were moments when the weight of public expectation seemed to press upon her. Small hesitations, a slight tightening of the jaw, and fleeting expressions of frustration suggested that the interview was touching on topics that were emotionally resonant, personally sensitive, or potentially controversial. Jaime, experienced in navigating such dynamics, maintained a professional but probing approach, allowing space for honesty while challenging responses that seemed rehearsed or overly cautious. This dynamic created an underlying tension that heightened the stakes and foreshadowed the eventual eruption of the public controversy. Insiders reported that the conversation was intended to cover multiple facets of Meghan's life, from her humanitarian efforts and professional endeavors to personal reflections and experiences navigating royal life and public scrutiny. Each topic was carefully sequenced, building a narrative arc designed to present a holistic, humanized portrait of the Duchess. Yet, even with careful planning, the human element, emotion, instinct, and the unpredictability of real-time dialogue played a decisive role. A single phrase, a subtle inflection, or an unintended implication had the potential to shape public perception in ways that could not be fully anticipated. The final moments leading up to the statement that would ignite global attention were characterized by a sense of anticipation that is almost impossible to convey without witnessing it firsthand. For Meghan, the culmination of months of preparation, emotional investment, and strategic calculation hung in the balance. For Jaime, the integrity of the interview and the ethical considerations surrounding disclosure were paramount. In that delicate intersection of intention, perception, and reality, the seeds of a controversy that would captivate the world were quietly, yet inexorably, planted. It was in this charged atmosphere, with expectations high and emotions taut, that the eventual revelation came. Jaime Kern Lima's public disclosure, that Meghan had allegedly paid for the interview, was not merely a factual statement. It was a dramatic rupture in the narrative carefully cultivated by Meghan's team. In an instant, months of preparation, emotional labor, and strategic planning were reframed by the public as a question of authenticity, credibility, and intent. The ramifications of that disclosure extended far beyond the immediate parties, touching media ethics, audience perception, and the broader cultural conversation surrounding transparency, influence, and the consequences of public life under a relentless spotlight. The world did not immediately anticipate the storm that Jaime Kern Lima's words would unleash. While Meghan Markle had been in the public eye for years, navigating controversy after controversy, this particular revelation carried a weight unlike any other. The very notion that the interview, long perceived by many as an intimate, candid exchange, could have been financially influenced reframed everything. Jaime, a figure known for her sharp intellect, unflinching honesty, and principled approach to media, had set the stage for a confrontation that was equal parts ethical debate, personal revelation, and public spectacle. It began quietly, almost innocuously. On a platform known for its broad reach and direct engagement with audiences, Jaime posted a statement that would quickly ripple across social media. Her announcement was precise, measured, and yet devastating in its implications. She acknowledged that while the conversation had occurred, there were factors that the public had not known, financial arrangements, subtle pressures, and strategic considerations that had influenced the dynamic in ways that were previously invisible. Each carefully chosen word carried a dual weight, the affirmation of factual events and the subtle moral judgment implicit in the disclosure. In interviews following the post, Jaime elaborated, recounting her experience during the preparation and execution of the interview. She described a highly orchestrated environment where expectations were not just set, but meticulously managed. Staff, lawyers, publicists, and advisors were all present, each contributing to a framework that aimed to achieve a specific public impression. While she did not speak directly in accusatory terms, the subtext was unmistakable. This was not the spontaneous, unfiltered conversation many had believed it to be. The notion of compensation introduced questions of authenticity, trust, and influence that immediately fueled a maelstrom of public reaction. What made Jaime's revelation particularly potent was her credibility. Unlike commentators or social media pundits who offer opinions with varying degrees of verification, Jaime had a track record of transparency and accountability. Her public persona was built on principled communication, an adherence to ethical standards, and a willingness to challenge figures of power when necessary. For the audience, this lent her statements a gravity that could not be easily dismissed. Suddenly, the narrative surrounding Meghan's interview was no longer just about personal reflection. It was entangled with professional ethics, media integrity, and the question of whether monetary influence had skewed what was presented as an honest account. The timing of Jaime's disclosure also contributed to its impact. Social media algorithms amplified every detail, every quote, and every reaction in real time. News outlets quickly picked up the story, framing it in terms of both scandal and moral debate. Headlines posed questions, suggested wrongdoing, and highlighted the tension between celebrity influence and journalistic responsibility. Within hours, what began as a carefully choreographed interview had become a lightning rod for criticism, speculation, and debate. In recounting her decision to go public, Jaime emphasized that it was not taken lightly. She spoke candidly about her internal deliberations, the ethical considerations that weighed on her, and the potential personal consequences. Going public about financial arrangements with someone of Meghan's prominence carried enormous risk. There were potential legal challenges, reputational consequences, and social backlash to consider. Yet Jaime resolved that transparency, in the interest of truth and accountability, outweighed these risks. Her choice to speak openly underscored a central tension in the story: the collision between personal integrity and the allure, or pressure, of high-profile financial agreements. Public response was immediate and polarized. On one side were individuals who viewed Jaime's disclosure as a necessary act of honesty, exposing a reality that had been obscured. They debated the ethics of financial influence in media, questioned the integrity of celebrity narratives, and explored broader implications for public trust. On the other side were defenders of Meghan, who argued that financial arrangements and interviews are common, often necessary, and do not inherently undermine authenticity. Social media, forums, and news comment sections became battlegrounds where opinion clashed with fact, emotion collided with logic, and cultural interpretations of ethics, power, and privilege were fiercely contested. The emotional dimension cannot be understated. Sources close to Jaime revealed that this was not merely a professional decision, but a deeply personal one. There was a sense of obligation, a moral imperative to clarify the circumstances of the interview in a way that preserved credibility and integrity. She recounted feeling the pressure of being caught between public expectation, her personal standards, and the potential repercussions of speaking out. The stress of this moment, combined with the awareness of its potential impact, created a narrative that was intensely human, relatable, and dramatically compelling. Audiences could sense the authenticity in her words, the weight of responsibility she carried, and the courage required to step into the public spotlight in such a manner. Adding to the complexity, insiders reported that Meghan's reaction to Jaime's disclosure was swift and emotionally charged. The revelation of payment arrangements struck at the core of her carefully curated public persona, a persona built around authenticity, sincerity, and relatability. To have that image questioned, especially in such a public and pointed manner, carried enormous emotional weight. Staff close to Meghan described her as visibly distressed, struggling to process the implications of Jaime's statement while considering the potential fallout in media narratives, public opinion, and personal relationships. The combination of personal vulnerability and public exposure created a crucible of emotional tension that would define the coming days. Experts in media ethics quickly weighed in, analyzing the situation from multiple angles. Some emphasized that financial arrangements for interviews are not inherently unethical, especially in industries where visibility and promotion are tightly intertwined with financial considerations. Others argued that transparency is essential, particularly when an audience is led to believe in the spontaneity and authenticity of a conversation. The discussion extended beyond this single incident, touching on broader questions about celebrity culture, the commodification of personal narratives, and the public's right to understand the dynamics behind seemingly candid media appearances. Ultimately, Jaime Kern Lima's public break changed the trajectory of the story entirely. The interview, once a controlled space for Meghan to articulate her narrative, became the epicenter of a controversy involving credibility, financial influence, and public perception. Every statement, gesture, and anecdote from the original conversation was now reframed under the lens of Jaime's disclosure. Audiences and commentators alike were compelled to reconsider their understanding of authenticity, trust, and the delicate balance between personal narrative and professional negotiation. The moment Jaime Kern Lima's revelation hit the public eye, Meghan Markle's carefully constructed world seemed to tremble beneath her feet. For weeks, Meghan had cultivated a narrative of openness, honesty, and relatability, presenting herself as a figure who had overcome adversity and now spoke candidly to the world. Every word in the original interview was meant to resonate with authenticity, every pause and emotional expression meticulously curated to convey sincerity. Yet Jaime's disclosure, suggesting financial influence over that very conversation, cast a shadow over the authenticity Meghan had worked so hard to project. From the onset, the reaction was immediate and visceral. Reports from insiders revealed Meghan retreating from the spotlight in the immediate aftermath, seeking refuge in private spaces within her residence while her team scrambled to manage the public and media narrative. Those closest to her described a mix of disbelief, frustration, and profound vulnerability. For Meghan, this was not simply a professional setback. It was an emotional blow that struck at the core of her identity as a public figure and as a woman attempting to navigate the relentless scrutiny of fame. The intensity of this emotional strain was amplified by the speed and reach of social media. In the digital age, news travels faster than ever, and within hours, every media outlet, every social platform, and every commentator was dissecting the implications of Jaime's statement. Every quote from the interview was now subject to renewed analysis, every phrase reinterpreted under a lens of skepticism and doubt. Privately, Meghan reportedly wrestled with an overwhelming sense of betrayal and humiliation. Staff members described her pacing, sitting silently for long stretches, or staring at her reflection, grappling with the cognitive dissonance of being portrayed as genuine while simultaneously being accused of monetary influence. Those around her spoke of her emotional vulnerability in ways that the public rarely witnessed, a woman caught between her desire to maintain dignity and the unrelenting public gaze that scrutinized even her most private reactions. The emotional weight of this moment cannot be overstated. Meghan's tears were not just a reaction to Jaime's revelation. They were a manifestation of pressure, of the fragility of public perception, and of the relentless expectations placed on her as a figure constantly under observation. Adding to the emotional complexity, Meghan's inner circle reportedly attempted to strategize a response, balancing damage control with authenticity. Advisors, publicists, and close confidants debated how to address Jaime's disclosure without further inflaming the controversy. Every potential statement, every tweet, and every public remark was analyzed for its tone, content, and implications. The pressure of needing to respond while maintaining credibility created an environment of intense stress. Sources close to Meghan indicated that she felt cornered, confronted not only by public scrutiny, but also by the realization that every action or statement could either exacerbate or mitigate the damage. Observers noted a distinct shift in Meghan's behavior during this period. Appearances that were once confident and poised were now tinged with caution and guardedness. Body language analysts pointed out subtle signs of distress, tightened jawlines, fidgeting hands, and prolonged pauses before speaking. Even in moments intended for positivity or public engagement, the emotional impact of Jaime's revelation was palpable. Audiences familiar with her previous composure began to detect cracks in the carefully curated image, interpreting them as evidence of vulnerability and emotional upheaval. The public response amplified Meghan's emotional turmoil. Social media erupted with polarized reactions. Some defended her, emphasizing the prevalence of financial arrangements in media and the need for understanding. Others criticized her for perceived manipulation and lack of transparency. Comment sections, discussion boards, and news panels became forums of relentless debate, with Meghan at the center. For someone who had long navigated the delicate balance of public opinion, the intensity of scrutiny during this period was particularly challenging. Sources close to Meghan noted that the sheer volume of commentary, often conflicting, sometimes vicious, made it difficult for her to discern allies from critics, support from condemnation. The emotional landscape was chaotic, relentless, and deeply personal. Friends and family reported that Meghan's emotional reaction extended beyond immediate professional concerns. There was a sense of personal betrayal, a deep questioning of trust, and a painful awareness that her intentions could be misinterpreted or weaponized in the court of public opinion. Her tears, which were private yet intensely visible to those around her, reflected an internal struggle, the desire to maintain her public image while contending with profound feelings of hurt, frustration, and exposure. Those closest to her observed moments of quiet reflection, sometimes punctuated by frustration or anger, as she grappled with the knowledge that her narrative had been challenged in ways beyond her control. One particularly dramatic aspect of this emotional fallout was Meghan's relationship with her own public identity. Having spent years carefully managing her image, her advocacy, and her platform, the revelation by Jaime prompted a re-evaluation of her persona. Sources suggest that Meghan questioned the boundaries between authenticity and public perception, struggling with the realization that even well-intentioned narratives could be perceived as manipulative or transactional. The weight of this realization compounded her emotional distress, forcing her to confront not only the immediate controversy, but also the broader implications for her credibility, influence, and personal agency. The psychological impact was further complicated by the nature of celebrity culture itself. Meghan's life, already heavily scrutinized, left little room for private reflection without external judgment. Every emotional response was potentially fodder for public interpretation, and every private moment had the potential to become public spectacle. This created a feedback loop of stress and anxiety. The more she sought privacy to process her feelings, the more public speculation intensified, amplifying the emotional stakes. Emotional experts reviewing her situation noted that the pressure placed on individuals in her position is unprecedented, often leading to heightened emotional vulnerability, fluctuating moods, and a constant negotiation between self-expression and self-preservation. Adding to this complexity, Meghan's interactions with media intermediaries, legal advisors, and publicists reportedly involved heated discussions, strategizing, and meticulous planning. Each potential response was weighed against the potential for escalation, public perception, and personal emotional toll. Sources noted that Meghan experienced moments of intense frustration, expressing that the situation felt unfair, unbalanced, and emotionally exhausting. The toll on her mental state was significant, creating a highly charged environment in which every decision carried profound emotional consequences. Ultimately, Meghan Markle's emotional fallout was not merely a reaction to Jaime Kern Lima's disclosure. It was a multifaceted experience shaped by the collision of personal vulnerability, public scrutiny, and the high stakes of reputation management. Her tears, stress, and introspection captured a deeply human response to an extraordinary set of circumstances, reflecting the intersection of emotion, ethics, and celebrity culture. In this chapter of the story, the audience witnesses not just a public figure under scrutiny, but a complex individual navigating the emotional turbulence created by the convergence of truth, perception, and consequence. As this emotional fallout unfolded, it became clear that Meghan's response would define the narrative for weeks to come. The emotional resonance of her reaction, combined with the public's polarized interpretations, established the context for subsequent chapters, the strategic decisions, the media battles, and the personal reckoning that would continue to shape her story. The intensity of this period underscored the fragility of public image, the power of disclosure, and the human cost of navigating life under constant observation. The moment news of Jaime Kern Lima's revelation began circulating, the royal household was thrust into a whirlwind of internal deliberations, crisis management, and damage control. The palace, known for its meticulous attention to protocol, public image, and media relations, reacted with both urgency and caution. Unlike typical media controversies, this situation carried layers of complexity. It involved not only Meghan Markle, a high-profile member of the royal family, but also issues that intersected with public perception, trust, and the monarchy's broader reputation. Within hours, senior aides, private secretaries, and communications teams convened, each aware that their response would be scrutinized as heavily as the revelation itself. Inside the palace, the atmosphere was described as tense and focused. Advisors and aides were acutely aware that a misstep could exacerbate an already volatile situation. Meetings were held behind closed doors with a clear agenda: assess the immediate fallout, develop a coherent communication strategy, and determine how best to support the Duchess while safeguarding the institution's image. Royal insiders reported that discussions were layered and multifaceted. One key concern was the framing of Meghan's actions. How could the palace acknowledge her humanity and vulnerability without appearing complicit in any alleged impropriety or financial influence? Every word considered for public release underwent rigorous analysis, as advisors weighed legal, ethical, and reputational implications. Strategically, the palace had to consider multiple audiences simultaneously: domestic and international media, the public, political commentators, and social media platforms. Each audience carried its own expectations and sensitivities. The British public, deeply invested in the monarchy, would interpret every nuance and gesture, while global media outlets could amplify interpretations in ways that the palace could not fully control. Social media, in particular, presented a formidable challenge. Misinformation and speculation spread rapidly, often outpacing official statements. In response, the royal communications team prioritized speed and clarity, coordinating closely with Meghan's personal advisors to ensure a consistent and measured message. The legal team played a crucial role in these deliberations. Given the potential implications of Jaime Kern Lima's statement, legal advisors assessed liability, contractual obligations, and possible defamation claims. Their counsel emphasized caution, recommending that any public response avoid admission of fault or acknowledgement of claims that could be construed as legal vulnerabilities. The result was a careful balancing act. The palace and Meghan's team sought to address public concerns and provide reassurance without escalating the controversy or inviting legal complications. From a strategic standpoint, the palace also considered historical precedent. The institution had previously navigated high-profile controversies involving members of the royal family, media scrutiny, and public perception. Lessons from past incidents informed their approach: maintain calm, avoid overexposure, and emphasize continuity, integrity, and the human dimension behind the headlines. However, Meghan's situation was distinct in several ways. Her celebrity status, media savviness, and international profile meant that traditional royal protocols required adaptation. The communication plan had to be agile, responsive, and sensitive to the emotional dimensions of the controversy, while remaining consistent with the monarchy's broader messaging. Within this context, Meghan herself became an active participant in the strategic response. Insiders noted that she engaged closely with advisors, reviewing drafts of public statements, social media messaging, and potential interview responses. Her involvement was driven by both personal stakes and an acute awareness of public perception. Sources described her as meticulous, determined, and focused, carefully weighing every word for its potential impact on both her personal image and the monarchy's reputation. Yet, her emotional state, still fragile from the fallout, introduced additional complexity. Balancing personal feelings, professional considerations, and institutional expectations required a delicate negotiation that tested both her resilience and her strategic instincts. One immediate step involved controlling the narrative in media channels. Palace Communications directed spokespeople to issue carefully crafted statements emphasizing empathy, transparency, and accountability. The messages underscored Meghan's commitment to integrity and her ongoing engagement with media and charitable work. These statements were deliberately neutral, avoiding direct confrontation with Jaime Kern Lima's claims while projecting a sense of stability and measured response. The language was precise, reassuring yet firm, humanizing yet disciplined. Public relations teams coordinated with social media managers to ensure consistency across platforms, preempting potential misinterpretations or distortions. The palace also recognized the importance of internal support networks. Meghan's close confidants, family members, and aides were mobilized to provide personal guidance and reassurance. Emotional support, logistical coordination, and professional counsel were all interwoven to create a comprehensive support system. This internal network aimed to ensure that Meghan could navigate both the public scrutiny and her own emotional processing without compromising decision-making or public messaging. Sources noted that informal discussions, private briefings, and strategic planning sessions became a daily routine, reflecting the intensity and immediacy of the situation. Social perception management was another critical focus. The palace understood that public opinion could sway narratives, influence media coverage, and even impact the family's long-term credibility. Advisors analyzed social sentiment, monitored online discourse, and identified key influencers shaping conversations. Messaging was designed not only to respond to the immediate controversy, but also to reinforce broader themes of trust, authenticity, and dedication to public service. This approach sought to counterbalance potential damage while framing Meghan as a relatable, conscientious figure navigating extraordinary circumstances. As part of the strategy, the palace considered proactive engagement with select media outlets. Carefully curated interviews, public appearances, and charitable engagements were scheduled to project normalcy, resilience, and continued commitment to the monarchy's mission. These appearances were meticulously planned to balance visibility with discretion, ensuring that Meghan's actions demonstrated both authenticity and alignment with institutional expectations. Insiders emphasized that every move was scrutinized for potential impact, reflecting a broader recognition that perception could shape reality in ways both subtle and profound. Internal coordination extended to legal, media, and personal advisors working in tandem. This multidisciplinary approach allowed the palace to respond dynamically to evolving circumstances, adapting strategies as new developments arose. Contingency planning was extensive. Advisors anticipated potential escalation, misinformation campaigns, and unexpected public reactions. Each scenario was evaluated for impact, feasibility, and alignment with Meghan's personal objectives and the monarchy's institutional priorities. Ultimately, the royal response reflected a synthesis of strategic foresight, emotional intelligence, and disciplined execution. By balancing public messaging, internal support, and proactive engagement, the palace aimed to navigate the controversy without compromising credibility, integrity, or Meghan's personal agency. While the situation remained fluid and emotionally charged, these efforts established a framework for managing both immediate fallout and long-term implications. The chapter concludes with a recognition that this period of strategic damage control would have lasting consequences. The palace's handling of the situation, Meghan's engagement with advisors, and the careful calibration of public statements all contributed to shaping the evolving narrative. Audiences and media observers would continue to evaluate both the Duchess's actions and the monarchy's response, setting the stage for subsequent developments, public reactions, and the next chapters in Meghan Markle's complex journey through scrutiny, resilience, and personal reckoning. As news of Jaime Kern Lima's public statements about Meghan Markle spread, the media landscape erupted almost instantaneously. Headlines flashed across digital platforms, television news tickers ran nonstop updates, and social media platforms became battlegrounds for opinions, outrage, and speculation. This chapter explores the full intensity of the media frenzy, the mechanics of social amplification, and the psychological impact on Meghan and those around her. The initial wave of coverage was swift and unrelenting. Major news outlets immediately published breaking stories highlighting Kern Lima's claims, often framing them with provocative language to maximize engagement. Articles appeared on every prominent platform, from traditional newspapers to online tabloids, each vying for clicks and attention. Analysts noted the careful phrasing in these headlines, designed to evoke shock, curiosity, and even moral judgment. The framing, though subtle, created a narrative of controversy, implying impropriety or financial influence, while leaving room for readers to draw their own conclusions. Television networks followed suit, offering live analysis, panel discussions, and expert commentary. Media personalities dissected Kern Lima's statements, debating their implications and speculating on Meghan's motives and potential consequences. Some commentators took a sympathetic stance, suggesting that the Duchess was unfairly targeted and that the story reflected broader societal biases against her. Others were more critical, framing the revelation as an example of perceived manipulation or privilege. This polarized coverage fueled further conversation and amplified the intensity of the public's reaction. Social media, however, became the epicenter of immediate reaction. Platforms like X, Instagram, TikTok, and Threads saw an unprecedented surge in posts, hashtags, and trending topics directly tied to Meghan and Kern Lima. Users from around the globe engaged in real-time commentary, creating memes, videos, and discussion threads that dissected every angle of the story. The viral nature of social media meant that interpretations, rumors, and personal opinions multiplied rapidly, often outpacing traditional journalistic verification. Analysts estimated that within the first 24 hours, millions of posts and interactions referenced Meghan in the context of Kern Lima's statement, creating an unparalleled level of public scrutiny. This digital maelstrom carried profound psychological and reputational consequences. Meghan Markle, already navigating the intense pressures of public life, faced an overwhelming barrage of attention. Sources close to her described the emotional toll as immense, noting that the constant visibility and commentary intensified feelings of anxiety, vulnerability, and isolation. Each social media post, no matter how minor or speculative, was magnified into a perceived judgment, contributing to a sense of scrutiny that was relentless and all-encompassing. In addition to personal pressure, the media frenzy created tangible professional ramifications. Public perception began to influence partnerships, charitable engagements, and broader public reception. Advisors carefully monitored social sentiment, noting shifts in public opinion that could affect not only Meghan's personal reputation, but also the image of the monarchy. Strategic recalibration became necessary. Messaging had to account for the speed and unpredictability of viral reactions while maintaining coherence with long-term communications objectives. Media experts observed several patterns in the coverage. First, there was a tendency to sensationalize details, emphasizing conflict and emotional drama over nuance or context. Second, audiences were polarized along pre-existing lines of support or criticism for Meghan, with reactions often influenced by broader cultural narratives about privilege, celebrity, and gender. Third, the viral nature of social media created a feedback loop. Coverage amplified public reaction, which in turn prompted further coverage, creating a cycle that was difficult to break. Influencers and commentators outside traditional media also played a major role. Popular podcasters, YouTubers, and independent journalists dissected the story from every possible angle. Some produced lengthy analysis videos, connecting Kern Lima's statements to previous interviews, contracts, and alleged motivations. Others created emotionally charged commentaries, blending personal opinion with factual reporting to drive engagement. The sheer diversity of voices and platforms created a complex information ecosystem where accuracy, speculation, and interpretation intermixed freely. Throughout this frenzy, one phenomenon became particularly pronounced: the speed at which unverified claims and rumors spread. Even minor inaccuracies could be amplified into widely accepted facts, creating challenges for Meghan and her advisors. Addressing these misrepresentations required strategic precision, balancing the need for correction with the risk of drawing additional attention. Every public statement had to be crafted carefully, weighing both immediate impact and long-term consequences in a media environment where narratives evolved in real time. Public reactions extended beyond commentary to active engagement. Hashtags praising or criticizing Meghan trended globally. User polls evaluated her credibility, and opinion pieces flooded every digital channel. Social media users, often anonymous, expressed strong moral judgments, creating an environment of relentless scrutiny. Observers noted that the emotional intensity of these interactions often surpassed rational analysis, reflecting a combination of cultural fascination, celebrity interest, and the inherent drama of perceived scandal. Meanwhile, traditional journalism sought to maintain credibility amidst the chaos. Fact-checking teams, editorial boards, and investigative journalists worked to verify claims, consult sources, and provide context. However, the pace of modern news consumption often conflicted with these methods. In a world driven by instant updates, viral attention, and algorithmic amplification, measured reporting competed with sensationalism. This tension underscored the challenges faced by Meghan's team in managing the narrative, as every statement, tweet, or report had the potential to redefine public perception within minutes. The emotional dimension of the media frenzy cannot be overstated. Meghan, described by close aides as exhausted and emotionally strained, faced the dual challenge of responding publicly while processing the personal ramifications of Kern Lima's statements. Emotional support became a critical component of her response, with advisors, family members, and trusted confidants providing guidance, reassurance, and stability. This internal support network was essential not only for strategic decision-making, but also for preserving mental well-being in the face of relentless scrutiny. The chapter also explores the role of global media and cultural context. While the controversy originated in the United States, its ripple effects extended internationally. Media outlets in Europe, Asia, and other regions picked up the story, often adapting it to local cultural frameworks and public interests. Analysts noted that international coverage sometimes emphasized different aspects of the controversy, highlighting cultural sensitivities, perceptions of royalty, and the influence of celebrity. This global amplification created additional layers of complexity, as Meghan's response had to resonate not only domestically but across diverse international audiences. As the frenzy continued, patterns emerged in both coverage and public reaction. Audiences engaged in debates, comparisons, and historical analogies, referencing past royal controversies, celebrity scandals, and media missteps. These discussions often reflected broader societal questions about power, privilege, ethics, and accountability. For Meghan, navigating these discussions required both emotional resilience and strategic insight, balancing the desire to correct misperceptions with the need to maintain dignity and composure. Ultimately, the media frenzy and social media backlash served as both a magnifier and a crucible. They amplified every word, gesture, and action, while simultaneously testing Meghan's ability to manage public perception, personal emotions, and institutional expectations. The speed, intensity, and unpredictability of the coverage underscored the challenges inherent in modern celebrity and royal life, where public scrutiny is instantaneous, global, and often unrelenting. This chapter concludes by recognizing that the media storm was far from a transient event. Its effects would reverberate across Meghan's public image, the monarchy's reputation, and broader cultural narratives. How she navigated these turbulent waters, responded to criticism, and maintained personal integrity would shape the unfolding story, influencing public perception, media discourse, and the strategic decisions made in subsequent chapters. The foundation was set for deeper exploration of personal confrontations, legal ramifications, and public fallout in the chapters that follow. As the media storm surrounding Meghan Markle escalated to global proportions, the royal family could no longer observe the unfolding drama from the sidelines. The palace, long accustomed to managing public perception and crises, sprang into action with a combination of strategic communication, internal deliberations, and careful damage control. This chapter examines the intricate maneuvers, behind-the-scenes calculations, and political navigation that defined the royal response, highlighting both the public and private dimensions of their approach. From the earliest moments, the palace recognized the potential implications of Kern Lima's statements. Meghan's public profile, already a source of intense scrutiny, had now intersected with allegations that carried both reputational and legal ramifications. Advisors convened emergency meetings, drawing on experience from past royal controversies to assess potential fallout, anticipate media narratives, and prepare targeted responses. The urgency of the situation was clear. Any misstep could exacerbate public criticism, embolden detractors, or provoke further media sensationalism. The first priority was internal alignment. Senior members of the family, including King Charles, Prince William, and Princess Anne, were briefed extensively on the situation. Private consultations were conducted with legal experts, communications directors, and security personnel, ensuring that every potential action was informed by expertise. Palace insiders described the atmosphere as tense and highly focused, with an understanding that the crisis demanded both precision and discretion. The stakes were not merely reputational. They involved the delicate balance of family dynamics, institutional integrity, and public trust. Public messaging emerged as a central component of the royal strategy. Carefully worded statements were crafted to address the controversy without amplifying it unnecessarily. These communications had to satisfy multiple objectives: reassure the public, maintain the monarchy's image of stability, and subtly signal support or concern for Meghan without becoming entangled in contentious details. Every phrase was scrutinized, every nuance debated, and every potential interpretation weighed, reflecting the complex interplay between transparency, prudence, and influence. In parallel, the palace engaged in discreet negotiations with media outlets. High-level correspondences sought to correct inaccuracies, provide context, and ensure that reporting remained within certain bounds of decorum. These efforts were particularly focused on influential publications with global reach, where misrepresentations could rapidly escalate. Media advisors emphasized the importance of framing, timing, and consistency, recognizing that the palace's credibility could be reinforced or undermined by the public perception of its engagement with journalists. Legal considerations also played a pivotal role. Kern Lima's statements, while public, raised questions regarding contractual obligations, confidentiality agreements, and potential defamation claims. The palace's legal team reviewed all pertinent contracts, communications, and obligations to determine whether formal action was warranted. While litigation was considered, advisors were acutely aware of the potential for protracted legal battles to attract further media attention and exacerbate the controversy. As a result, legal strategies were carefully balanced against communications objectives, prioritizing damage mitigation and narrative control. Internally, the family grappled with the emotional and relational dimensions of the crisis. Meghan's relationship with senior members had been historically complex, marked by public admiration, private tension, and occasional misunderstandings. The palace recognized that the current situation could strain these dynamics further. Private discussions focused on ensuring mutual understanding, reaffirming family loyalty, and developing a coordinated approach that protected both individual and institutional interests. Sources indicated that empathy and strategic foresight were combined to navigate these delicate interpersonal challenges. Security considerations were another crucial element. Given the intensity of public attention, protective measures were reviewed and adjusted. These included monitoring social media for potential threats, coordinating with law enforcement, and ensuring the safety of both Meghan and other family members. Advisors understood that public crises could escalate unpredictably, and preventive measures were essential to mitigate risks ranging from harassment to security breaches. The palace also explored proactive engagement with the public. Recognizing that silence could be interpreted as passivity or complicity, the family contemplated controlled appearances, charitable initiatives, and subtle public gestures designed to reinforce their values and maintain public favor. Every action was calculated to balance visibility with dignity, allowing the monarchy to assert relevance without becoming entangled in sensationalism. The timing of announcements, choice of venues, and messaging content were all meticulously coordinated, reflecting a sophisticated understanding of public perception management. Behind the scenes, strategic intelligence played a key role. Advisors monitored social sentiment, media narratives, and emerging trends to anticipate developments. Real-time analysis allowed the palace to adapt its approach dynamically, responding to shifts in public discourse and recalibrating messaging as necessary. This continuous feedback loop was crucial for maintaining control in a rapidly evolving media environment, where narratives could pivot within hours and public opinion could be influenced by a single viral post or comment. Political implications were also assessed. The monarchy, as a constitutional institution, operates within the complex interplay of public trust, governmental relationships, and societal expectations. Advisors considered how the controversy could affect broader perceptions of the royal family, including their influence, cultural relevance, and public approval. Strategic foresight required anticipating potential scrutiny from politicians, commentators, and civic organizations, ensuring that the family's response aligned with both immediate needs and long-term institutional stability. The palace's response was characterized by both restraint and precision. Unlike previous crises that may have provoked immediate public statements or confrontational engagement, the approach here emphasized measured communication, internal cohesion, and tactical discretion. Observers noted that this reflected a deeper understanding of the contemporary media landscape, where overexposure can magnify minor details into major controversies. By calibrating visibility, prioritizing controlled messaging, and aligning legal and communication strategies, the palace aimed to navigate the crisis with minimal collateral damage. Throughout this period, the personal dimension of Meghan's situation remained a significant concern. Advisors were acutely aware that the Duchess faced not only public scrutiny, but also emotional strain. Internal discussions considered her well-being, support systems, and capacity to manage the relentless attention. Balancing the individual needs of a family member with institutional imperatives presented a constant challenge, highlighting the human complexity underlying the public spectacle. As the initial response unfolded, patterns began to emerge. The royal family demonstrated an ability to adapt to the rapid pace of media amplification, maintain internal cohesion, and coordinate across multiple domains simultaneously. Their approach combined legal prudence, strategic communication, security awareness, and emotional intelligence, creating a multifaceted framework for managing crisis in an environment defined by unprecedented visibility and scrutiny. The palace's maneuvers also reflected lessons learned from prior controversies. Experience with media crises, public perception management, and internal conflicts informed every decision. Advisors drew on historical precedents, contemporary analysis, and ongoing intelligence to ensure that actions were both timely and effective. This institutional memory, combined with real-time adaptability, allowed the family to navigate the controversy with sophistication and resilience. Ultimately, the royal response highlighted the intricate balance between personal loyalty, public image, and institutional preservation. Every statement, gesture, and strategic decision was weighed against multiple dimensions of impact, reflecting an understanding that modern monarchy operates not only as a family unit, but as a highly visible cultural institution. The coordinated approach underscored the capacity of the palace to respond with discipline, foresight, and tactical acumen, even amid intense global scrutiny. The moment the news about Meghan Markle's alleged misconduct and the ensuing palace response reached the public, the narrative exploded across every media platform imaginable. From traditional newspapers to online tabloids, social media threads, podcasts, and late-night commentary shows, the story dominated global attention, generating a frenzy of speculation, judgment, and outrage. Chapter 7 delves deeply into how public outcry escalated, how media organizations shaped the narrative, and how this unprecedented backlash affected both Meghan and the royal institution at large. From the very first hours of reporting, the story's virality was extraordinary. Social media platforms became a crucible where every piece of information, confirmed or rumored, was dissected, shared, and amplified. Twitter, now known as X, saw tens of thousands of posts with hashtags related to Meghan, Prince Harry, and the palace, trending simultaneously across multiple countries. Analysts tracked a surge in engagement that was unprecedented, with millions of impressions occurring within the first 24 hours of the controversy going public. The speed and intensity of the discourse reflected not only public curiosity, but a collective fascination with royal scandal, a fascination that transcended borders, cultures, and languages. Mainstream media outlets seized upon the story, often framing it with the kind of dramatic flair reserved for high-stakes political crises or celebrity debacles. Headlines ranged from accusatory to sensationalist, some implying direct guilt, others hinting at deeper conspiracies or secretive palace cover-ups. Each outlet curated the narrative according to its readership and editorial bias, creating a fragmented, yet collectively intense, public dialogue. Television networks aired panel discussions, sometimes featuring former palace insiders, legal experts, or social commentators, all offering divergent takes that fueled public debate. Social media, however, was the true arena of public backlash. Public figures, influencers, and ordinary users alike contributed to an ongoing storm, with commentary ranging from sympathetic analysis to outright condemnation. Video clips, screenshots of statements, and speculative commentary spread like wildfire, often detached from verified facts, further intensifying the perception of a crisis. Memes and satirical content also played a significant role, blending humor with criticism in ways that amplified attention while subtly shaping opinion. The combination of factual reporting, rumor, and creative commentary created a complex ecosystem in which perception became as influential as reality. Polls and sentiment analysis conducted during the early stages of the controversy revealed a sharply polarized public. Some segments of the population expressed skepticism toward Meghan's version of events, citing a perceived pattern of media manipulation and self-promotion. Others, however, criticized the palace for perceived overreach or for mishandling sensitive interpersonal matters. The intensity of these opinions often correlated with geography, political leanings, and prior perceptions of the monarchy, illustrating how a single controversy could trigger multiple, sometimes conflicting, waves of public sentiment. Influential journalists and commentators intensified the media storm, adding layers of interpretation that ranged from legal analysis to moral judgment. Some columns speculated about possible future litigation, while others examined historical precedents for royal misconduct and public scandal. The commentary frequently referenced prior controversies involving Meghan and Prince Harry, drawing connections that suggested a larger pattern of behavior. This framing, whether fair or exaggerated, created a feedback loop. Public reaction informed media coverage, and media coverage in turn fueled further public reaction. Online forums became hubs for heated debate. Communities dedicated to royal news, pop culture, and social commentary dissected every detail of the story. Threads discussing Kern Lima's statements, palace communications, and potential legal ramifications often garnered thousands of replies, with participants scrutinizing minute details ranging from body language in public appearances to the wording of official statements. The intensity of engagement reflected a collective obsession with the monarchy, a fascination with scandal, and a hunger for insider knowledge, whether confirmed or speculative. The backlash extended to international news networks, highlighting the global dimension of the controversy. Outlets in Europe, North America, Asia, and Australia ran stories, conducted interviews, and produced in-depth analyses that examine the implications not just for Meghan and Harry, but for the royal family as an institution. The stories' reach demonstrated the enduring international influence of the British monarchy and how a controversy in London could trigger waves of discussion and opinion in distant capitals thousands of miles away. Celebrity reactions further amplified the narrative. Public figures in entertainment, sports, and politics weighed in, either defending Meghan or criticizing her actions, often through social media or interviews. These reactions were widely reported and shared, magnifying the story's impact while contributing additional layers of complexity. The involvement of other celebrities transformed the controversy into a cultural phenomenon, merging royal affairs with pop culture in a way that intensified public fascination. Corporate interests also responded swiftly. Brands, advertisers, and sponsors with connections to the royal family or the individuals involved evaluated potential reputational risks.